She smiled through the screen, wearing a diamond bracelet bought with the money I saved my whole life, and said I'd be fine. She didn't know I was ready. My wife was laughing when she destroyed my life. The screen froze on a frame that would burn itself into the folds of my memory. Kayla, eyes glinting with champagne sheen, holding her phone up to capture the full sparkle of the diamond bracelet hugging her wrist, my retirement money wrapped around her like a gift from God. Behind her, sunlight spilled through the panoramic windows of a hotel suite I didn't recognize. Definitely not the modest Portland apartment she'd claimed to be visiting. No. This place had marble floors, white orchids, and a skyline that screamed San Diego. "You'll be okay," she said, voice lilting like a promise, wine glass tipping dangerously in her hand. I landed on my feet. "You will too." Then she giggled. That same sound that used to be mine, over takeout dinners and whispered dreams. But now it was hollow, like ice cubes clinking in an empty glass. The video ended. I set the phone down with deliberate calm, though my knuckles were white against the kitchen counter. Everything around me was silent. Staged. The pristine mid-century furniture she had insisted on last year. The sleek chrome appliances she couldn't cook without but never used. Even the framed art on the wall, geometric, cold, sterile, screamed her taste, not mine. There wasn't a single photograph of us left on display. I noticed that now. Even our wedding picture, the one I'd once caught her staring at during quiet mornings, had been replaced with an abstract smear of red and black. Probably cost $2,000 and meant absolutely nothing. This house hadn't felt like home in years. But now, it felt like a stranger's showroom. I walked slowly into my home office, every step echoing louder than it should have. The air was dry, heavy, like Tucson before a monsoon storm. I knelt by the bottom drawer of my desk, the one Kayla never bothered to open, the one I'd locked for nearly a year. The key was taped beneath the drawer rail, where she wouldn't think to look. Not that she ever tried. I opened it. Inside were folders, manila, thick, organized with a precision she would have mocked as overkill. Labeled in crisp handwriting, bank statements, power of attorney, irrevocable trust forms, corporate transfer agreements. All dry words, but each one a brick in the firewall I had built between her and the rest of my life. She thought she had taken everything. But the truth? She'd only stolen what I'd let her see. $836,000. That was what our main retirement account had held as of last quarter. It had taken me 2 decades of budgeting, compounding interest, and restraint. No boats. No toys. Just spreadsheets, smart investments, and faith in the future, our future. And she drained it like it was hers. I pulled up the account on my monitor. Her recent withdrawal was there, time-stamped 10:42 a.m., 2 days ago. Just under the federal holiday weekend, a strategic delay in fraud processing. She wasn't stupid. But she wasn't prepared either. What Kayla never knew, because she never listened when I tried to explain, was that only 28% of our retirement was in that joint account. The rest was tucked into corporate segregated investments tied to my consulting firm. A firm she signed over power of attorney for when I formed it during a contract with Nexera Systems last year. She never asked what that meant. Just signed where I highlighted, smiling because the numbers made her feel safe. She never bothered to read. I sat back in my chair and let my eyes move across the room. The clean lines. The organized chaos of my mind made visible. Even here, in the one place she never truly entered, I could feel the echo of her influence. The couch she picked. The wall color she'd chosen, storm cloud, she called it. She liked things cold. Crisp. Controlled. Funny, isn't it? How the person you love slowly becomes a curator of your life instead of a part of it. It had been a long time coming, if I was honest. I'd seen the signs. The way she smiled at her phone more than at me. The weekends away for networking that came back with new clothes and no receipts. The time she came home late smelling like someone else's cologne, subtle, but not mine. But what hurt the most wasn't the affair. Or even the money. It was the fact that she did it so casually. So cheerfully. Like I was just another phase she'd outgrown. I stood up, poured a glass of water, and walked through the house again, slower this time, like a detective at the scene of his own murder. Each room whispered the same truth: this was never really my space. Just a place I paid for. A life I funded. I paused in the hallway outside the master bedroom. Her perfume still lingered faintly. A sharp floral with a metallic edge, something expensive she'd started wearing last spring. I'd once bought her a similar scent years ago, and she hated it. Now she wore this one constantly. Probably his preference. Travis Greer. That name burned like acid on my tongue. Regional sales manager for some audio tech company. I looked him up once when I saw a photo of him at a conference Kayla attended. Perfect teeth, perfect hair, smirked like a man who never faced real consequences. He would. They both would. I walked back into my office, sat down, and opened a fresh document on my desktop. Subject: Preliminary Divorce Filing. Prepared for submission, October 14th. My hand didn't shake as I typed. They thought they won. But this wasn't a surrender. It was a beginning. And I don't lose wars. I prepare for them. There's a quiet kind of betrayal that doesn't scream when it arrives. It seeps in, like water through cracked grout, silent, patient, and corrosive. That's how it started with Kayla. I used to believe she was the best decision I'd ever made. 12 years ago, she was lightning in a bottle. Fierce, brilliant, seductive in a way that didn't rely on overt sexuality but on sheer presence. We were both 28. She worked in pharmaceutical sales and walked like she owned every hallway she entered. I was the quiet guy in IT, methodical, understated, the kind of man who didn't speak unless he had something worth saying. She liked that about me, at first. You plan. I live, she used to say. That's the balance. For a while, it was true. I brought structure, she brought spontaneity. She'd pull me away from my laptop for last-minute road trips, drag me into dinner parties with people I would have avoided, and laugh when I made charts for our vacation budgets. We were complementary forces, her chaos softened by my control. But balances shift. I can't say when I first noticed the fractures. Maybe it was the way she started pouring wine the moment she got home. One glass turned to 2. Then 3. Then she stopped waiting for dinner to finish before starting her second bottle. I told myself she was just stressed. Her new territory at work was more competitive, and the company had laid off 2 of her colleagues. Maybe she was coping. But then came the gym memberships. She started working out late at night, saying it helped her sleep. That alone wouldn't have meant anything, if not for the sudden shift in wardrobe, clothes too tight, too sleek, too curated for sweat. Then the phone started living in her pocket, screen always down. Password changed. Notifications muted. Her laughter, once warm and open, became private and distant, something I heard through a closed bathroom door. Still, I said nothing. Not yet. I let it build. Observation became my armor. The signs, the silences, the strategic forgetfulness. It all told me something more dangerous was growing beneath the surface. The first hard clue came in the form of a bank alert I almost missed. 3 transactions. Each for $4,500. All within 10 days. All to the same bank card number, but under 3 different recipient names. Curious. I called the bank, verified the activity, then asked to trace the last name on the most recent transfer. They couldn't provide much, privacy laws, of course, but I recognized the bank name. A credit union in California. One often used by contract workers and traveling sales reps. Something clicked. She'd mentioned attending a medical technology conference in San Diego. Said it was mandatory. Said she'd be staying with her colleague, Natalie. But Natalie, as I later found out through LinkedIn, hadn't worked with Kayla in over a year. So I called in a favor. Darren Holt was an old college friend, now a private investigator with a specialty in marital fraud. Quiet, discreet, and efficient. Within 3 weeks, he had built a timeline. Hotel stays that didn't align with travel reimbursements. Restaurant reservations for 2 billed to a corporate card she never used. Photos, taken from a distance but damning nonetheless, of Kayla walking hand in hand with a man I'd never seen before. The timestamps aligned with every unexplained business trip she'd taken since April. His name was Travis Greer. A man with the kind of face that made women lean closer and men feel threatened. Too smooth, too calculated. Sales manager at an audio tech firm. No criminal record, but he moved like someone who'd been coached on how to leave no fingerprints. I didn't confront Kayla. Not yet. Instead, I started building my firewall. I created an LLC under the name Donovan Consulting Holdings. A perfectly legal move, standard practice in IT contracting, especially for liability protection. I transferred 70% of our mutual retirement funds into a self-directed SEP IRA tied to the business, shielded from marital access without written consent. She signed those documents herself. Smiled while she did. Thought it was just more of my money stuff. Kayla never cared about finances. Never once logged into our investment accounts, never asked about market trends or asset distributions. She just wanted to know if we were doing okay. And I always told her yes, because back then, it was true. I went further. I changed the passwords on all major financial platforms. Removed her access to joint dashboards. Revoked her shared credentials on my company systems. Installed dual authentication for every critical login. I even encrypted my internal communications and separated my backups into a cold storage server. Every move, invisible to her. Every precaution, executed with the same precision I'd used to build million-dollar IT networks for Fortune 500 companies. She thought I was just being busy again. But I was laying mines. The final step was securing my ownership paperwork, partnership shares from clients, equity holdings from previous contracts. I printed everything, triple-checked the notarizations, then locked it all away in the back of my home safe. A safe she didn't know the combination to. One she probably forgot even existed. I remember standing in front of that steel door the night I filed the last documents, listening to the click of the lock turning home. I didn't feel anger. Not yet. What I felt was gravity. Like the moment before a storm touches down. When everything is quiet, but you can smell the earth cracking beneath you. I started sleeping in the guest room 2 nights a week, told her I was snoring too loudly. In reality, I needed distance. I needed space to think without the sound of her breathing next to me, without the scent of that new perfume she wore, a scent I never bought her, but smelled like a memory I didn't own. I watched her pack 4 business trips. The way she chose her lingerie. The way she hesitated before zipping the bag closed, like maybe some part of her suspected I was watching. But she never said a word. Neither did I. Because when someone is building a news for themselves, the worst thing you can do is interrupt. I wasn't done preparing. And she wasn't done lying. And I wanted her to finish digging the grave she thought I couldn't see. Because when it collapsed, I needed her to feel the dirt on her own skin. Travis Greer leaned back in his leather chair, legs stretched, an easy grin on his face as he clicked through his email. The software of Sonnet Audio's internal HVAC system hummed above, drowning in the silence of his private office, top floor, corner view, glass all around. Power, framed in sunlight. He liked mornings like this. No clients. No pitch decks. Just coffee strong enough to burn and a new message from Kayla waiting in his inbox. He clicked it open, half expecting a flirtatious selfie or another forwarded bank confirmation. Instead, it was a PDF file. Retirement distribution timeline, projected liquidation schedule. He squinted. Rows of numbers, transfer amounts, accounts he'd never noticed before. Routing numbers, internal movement between investment vehicles. Annotated. Color-coded. Efficient. The document was dated 6 weeks ago. But he hadn't made it. Travis's smile faltered, just slightly. He scrolled down, spotting a signature block. Prepared by K. Donovan. For internal strategy use only. He stared at that name, letting it settle. Kayla had drafted this. Without him. And she'd done it with a precision he didn't think she was capable of. She was always emotional. Flighty. Smart, sure, but distracted. The type of woman who needed guidance. Direction. A frame to exist in. At least, that's how she had made him believe. Travis tapped his fingers on the desk, slow and rhythmic. His confidence cracked, just a hairline fracture, but it was enough to let suspicion in. The bracelet. The withdrawals. The way she'd suggested the sequence of transfers, not just the amounts. She hadn't asked for advice. She'd outlined steps. He just nodded and acted like he was the mastermind. But it was her playbook. Her rhythm. He had followed it because she made it look like it was his idea. And that, more than anything, scared him. He swiveled his chair to face the window, Tucson's skyline stretching hazy in the morning heat. He clenched his jaw. Travis had pulled off this con before, twice, to be exact. Women in crumbling marriages, desperate for validation, drunk on the illusion of danger. He gave them an escape hatch, helped them move money strategically, then vanished with a cut of their life savings. No one ever suspected him. He was too charming, too forgettable. The women took the fall. Divorce courts chewed them up. Husbands left ruined. That was the rhythm. But Kayla wasn't dancing to it. The more he thought about it, the more he realized he didn't actually know where the rest of the money had gone. She'd said the total account had over $800,000. But only about $180,000 ever came into accounts he controlled. The rest? Dispersed into buffer vehicles, she called them, temporary holdings she'd insisted were necessary to avoid triggering audit flags. He never questioned it. She always smiled when she explained, a kind of teasing grin that made him forget how complex the whole thing actually was. That grin, he thought it meant submission. He was just starting to realize it meant triumph. He stood abruptly, paced to the sideboard where he kept a bottle of bourbon behind a framed photo of his company's founding team. He poured a splash into a lowball glass, the burn waking something up behind his ribs. She had outplayed him. Not just used him. Maneuvered him like a piece on a chessboard. The worst part? He didn't even know when the game had started. Travis walked back to his desk and pulled up the bank dashboard he rarely needed to check. The main transfer account was still sitting at a cool $187,000. Unmoved. Unbothered. But the sub-accounts, temporary holdings under his name, had been cleaned out. All of them. Zero balances. The last transfer. 2 days ago. To an LLC he didn't recognize. He clicked deeper. Vanguard Horizon Logistics, LLC. The filing documents were public. A few minutes later, he had the owner's name, Kayla Donovan. Jesus Christ, he muttered, laughing once, sharp and bitter. She had created a shell company. Moved the funds through him. Used his name, his charm, his pattern. All while keeping the real leverage in her hands. If this went sideways, the forensic trail would show him as the siphon point. She'd look like a misguided spouse at worst. A manipulated victim. And if she walked now? She'd leave clean. Travis sat back down, the bourbon untouched. The game had flipped without him noticing. He wasn't the hunter anymore. He was the offering. The distraction. The decoy. She never loved him. That part was clear now. The way she laughed. Performed. The way she kissed. Measured. Like a woman who knew what it cost to play weak and was willing to pay the price. He had thought he was coaching her through the heist. But she was documenting his fingerprints on the vault. He thought of calling her. Of demanding answers. But what would that accomplish? She'd just smile again. Say something sweet and disarming. Remind him how far they'd come. Maybe even offer to meet in person, draw him out into another trap. No. He needed time. He needed to think. He needed to disappear before someone knocked on his door asking where $800,000 went. Across town, maybe even across state lines by now, Kayla was probably watching her accounts grow. Watching his burn. And planning her next move. Meanwhile. Across the city, Kayla sat in a hotel suite, different from the one she had filmed in, this one low profile, paid in cash, under a pseudonym she'd used before. The TV was on mute. Her phone was off. She had two laptops open, one routing through a VPN in British Columbia, the other running facial recognition software through a contact she'd once dated in cybersecurity. She sipped black coffee. No cream. No sugar. Just like Miles used to drink it. Her hand didn't tremble. Not when she opened the offshore account summary. Not when she saw the final transfer cleared. Not when she deleted the folder marked Travis Backup and emptied the trash. She had used love before. It never worked. She used trust now. Trust broke people faster. Kayla didn't believe in guilt. She believed in outcomes. In leverage. In survival. And she knew this game wasn't over. Not yet. Mark would come. Eventually. She was counting on it. But she wasn't done with Travis either. Not entirely. Some pawns deserve a second use, especially when they still don't know they've been played. The day after Kayla vanished from my life, physically, if not completely, was quieter than I expected. No more notifications, no smug texts, no cryptic voicemails. Just stillness. That kind of silence. It wasn't relief. It was residue. I couldn't sleep. The bed was too cold on one side and too unfamiliar on the other. I spent most of the night pacing, sipping lukewarm coffee, staring at my ceiling fan like it might give me answers. It didn't. By sunrise, I'd made up my mind, I needed to start cleaning out the parts of this house that still smelled like her. I started in the garage, moved into the utility closet, then the hallway storage, meticulous, methodical. Sorting boxes, trashing old paperwork, pulling dust-covered bins I hadn't opened in years. And that's when I found it. Tucked behind an old luggage set in the basement, an unmarked, gray metal box, about the size of a microwave. It had no labels, no markings, just a brass padlock hanging from the latch. It didn't look like something I owned. I stared at it for a full minute, something icy crawling down my spine. This didn't feel like a keepsake or forgotten holiday decor. This felt deliberate. I brought it upstairs, placed it on the kitchen island, and fetched my tools. 2 minutes later, the lock snapped open with a satisfying crack, and the lid creaked free. Inside were layers. At the top, a yellowed envelope. Underneath, a stack of documents wrapped in a thin ribbon. And below those, photographs. The first one nearly knocked the breath from my lungs. Kayla. 6 years younger, hair darker, face softer, standing outside of a children's hospital. Her arms wrapped tightly around a man I didn't recognize. Mid-30s, shaggy dark hair, sunglasses pushed up on his head like he didn't care. They weren't just posing. They were clinging to each other, bodies pressed tight in a way that said everything a caption couldn't. My hands trembled as I flipped it over. St. Mercy Children's Hospital, April 3rd. He's stable. We made it. I set it down. Swallowed hard. Another photo beneath it. This time, Kayla sitting in a waiting room, holding a toddler on her lap. She looked pale. Exhausted. Like a ghost of herself. The child wasn't mine. We weren't even married yet. But her eyes in that picture told a story I'd never heard. Then came the paperwork. Medical bill summary, St. Mercy Hospital Pediatric ICU. Amount, $42,900. Status, paid in full. Payer, Miles Reiner. The signature at the bottom was scribbled in blue ink, beside a note scrawled on the back of the bill. Debt cleared. You owe me now. I sank into a chair. The kitchen felt colder. The walls felt narrower. I unfolded the yellow envelope last, breath caught halfway in my chest. Inside, a single sheet of lined paper. Handwritten. Kayla's handwriting. Miles said being a good woman wouldn't save me. He was right. Love made me weak. Trust nearly broke me. But now. I remember the rules. Never play clean when the world is filthy. Never show your full hand. And never, ever let a man think you belong to him. Don't forget what this world takes from women who don't take it first. No date. No signature. Just those lines, etched in ink and bitterness. I leaned back, the weight of it all pressing down on me like a second gravity. So this was her origin story. Miles Reiner. The man in the photos. He'd helped her once. Paid for something big. Something tied to a child, maybe his, maybe not. But he didn't do it out of love. He did it as leverage. He marked her. And something inside her calcified from that point on. She didn't become a monster overnight. She became a survivor with teeth. And somewhere along the way, she stopped pretending otherwise. All those years I thought I was anchoring our lives, she was drawing blueprints for a different game. The betrayal with Travis wasn't emotional recklessness. It was a calculated act. A move on a board she'd been building since long before me. And I wasn't her first mistake. I was her cleanest one. I stared at the paper again. Never show your full hand. She never had. I pushed away from the table and stood slowly, wiping my palms on my jeans. My breath had evened out, but inside I was boiling, controlled, focused rage. Not because she'd lied. Not because she'd cheated. Because I finally saw her. And she had made damn sure I wouldn't see her until it was too late. But it wasn't. Not quite. I reached for my phone and pulled up my contact list. Julian Park. Forensic accountant. Former IRS. Quiet as death. Ruthless as math. He picked up on the second ring. Mark. I need you to trace everything, I said without greeting. All the accounts connected to Kayla. Personal, joint, corporate. Even dead-end ones. I don't care if they're in Belize or under a burner phone in a gym locker. A pause. You expecting something shady? I'm expecting a nest of vipers, I said. And one of them has my last name. He exhaled. All right. Send me what you've got. I'll bring it in person, I said. There's a box. You need to see it. And then I paused. There's a man named Miles Reiner. I want you to find him too. You think he's helping her? No, I said flatly. I think he's the reason she learned to burn people like me. The line went quiet for a second. Understood. I hung up. The wind outside had picked up, dust brushing against the window panes like restless fingers. Fall in Tucson always felt like a warning. Dry skies. Cold shade. And storms that didn't knock. I looked back down at the open box. The photos. The note. And I finally understood. Kayla didn't betray me to escape. She betrayed me because she believed the world only respected those who strike first. She thought I'd never be willing to become that kind of man. She was wrong. Now that I knew the game she was playing, I wasn't going to chase her. I was going to beat her at it. 2 weeks passed like years. Julian Park had done what he always did, dig with clinical precision. And what he uncovered wasn't just a paper trail, it was a blueprint for manipulation. Shell companies, staggered transfers, burner accounts. The digital web Kayla had spun was intricate, almost elegant. But not perfect. Not anymore. By the time I filed the divorce petition at the Tucson County Courthouse, I had everything I needed. Kayla had forged my signature on 2 authorization documents. The video she sent, the one where she flaunted that diamond bracelet and told me I'd land on my feet, was time-stamped and admissible. She had withdrawn hundreds of thousands without consent. And Travis Greer? His name was all over it. We didn't need to prove motive. Just intent and execution. And we had both. Court was set for 9 a.m., a Wednesday that broke with crisp desert air and a sky too blue for what was coming. I arrived early, dressed in charcoal gray, pressed shirt, no tie. Calm. Measured. Julian met me in the hallway, briefcase in hand, expression flat as granite. She's already here, he said. Alone? No. He's with her. Of course he was. I stepped into the courtroom just as Kayla and Travis took their seats at the respondent's table. She wore a fitted navy dress, subdued but intentional. He was in a suit he probably borrowed. He looked pale, hands clasped tightly, the usual swagger gone from his posture. Kayla, on the other hand, was composed. Unbothered. She offered me a glance that was equal parts recognition and dismissal. As if we were just 2 strangers who happened to cross paths in the same theater of war. Judge Eliza Morrow entered promptly. Silver hair, sharp glasses, and a voice like polished stone. We stood. We sat. Then it began. My attorney, Daniel Green, opened with a clean summary. Your Honor, we will present evidence of unauthorized financial activity, forged legal documents, and video admission by Mrs. Donovan regarding the liquidation of jointly held retirement funds. He didn't embellish. Didn't dramatize. He didn't have to. The facts were fireproof. Exhibit A, the notarized paperwork with my forged signature. Exhibit B, the email trail between Kayla and Travis planning fund withdrawals. Exhibit C, the video. Unedited. Her words played aloud in the courtroom like a death sentence delivered in silk. I've already liquidated our retirement. You'll be fine. I am. The judge watched silently. Then turned to Kayla. Mrs. Donovan, do you dispute the contents of this video? Kayla didn't flinch. No, Your Honor. And the signature on these documents? She smiled faintly. I believed I had his implied consent. Implied. She used that word like a shield. Judge Morrow turned toward Travis. Mr. Greer, records show you received over $180,000 in direct transfers from the Donovans' joint retirement account. Are you claiming ignorance of the source? Travis swallowed. Kayla told me the funds were hers. That they were from a separate inheritance account. The judge raised one brow. You didn't verify that? She said. We're not interested in what she said, Mr. Greer. We're interested in what you did. The room was silent, charged like a storm about to break. That's when Julian stood. Calm. Precise. Your Honor, if I may, Exhibit D. He approached with a folder, handed it to the clerk, who passed it to the bench. Judge Morrow flipped through it. Greer Holdings LLC, she asked. Yes, ma'am, Julian replied. That's the account which received nearly $60,000 from the layered transactions we traced back to the Donovans' liquidated funds. And this LLC belongs to Mr. Greer? Julian's mouth twitched, just slightly. No, Your Honor. It belongs to Mrs. Kayla Donovan. The pause that followed was nuclear. Travis turned to Kayla, slow and disbelieving. You said, his voice cracked, loud enough for the room to hear. You said that account was mine. That it was, secure. Kayla didn't look at him. Didn't say a word. Travis leaned closer, panic tightening his features. Kayla. What did you do? And still, nothing. The judge cleared her throat, attention laser-focused. Mr. Greer, are you now saying you had no knowledge of the ownership of the account receiving these funds? He floundered. I didn't check. I trusted her. She set you up, Julian said quietly, but firmly. She funneled funds through your name, but into an entity under her legal control. And now that the audit trail is public, the appearance of fraud is centered on you. Travis's face collapsed into something less human, somewhere between fear and disbelief. Kayla turned toward him slowly. Smiled. And in that smile, I saw it. Victory. Not over the court. Over him. Because she had never trusted him either. The judge brought her gavel down once. Sharp. Enough. I'm freezing all disputed assets effective immediately. No funds are to be moved, transferred, or touched until this case is fully adjudicated. She turned to Kayla. Mrs. Donovan, while the court cannot determine criminal guilt in this setting, the evidence presented raises serious questions regarding intent and manipulation. I'm referring all financial documentation to the district attorney's office for further review. Kayla inclined her head, expression cool. Of course, Your Honor. She didn't even blink. The court moved on to procedural matters after that, custodial access, restraining financial motions. But the real trial had already happened in that hour. Travis tried to regain his footing, tried to explain himself. But the damage was done. The pattern was clear. He hadn't just been an accomplice. He'd been a pawn. As we filed out, Travis sat in stunned silence, sweat darkening the collar of his shirt. I passed him without a word. He didn't look up. Kayla stood near the exit, arms crossed, jaw high. Waiting. I paused. You think this is over? She asked, voice soft. No, I said. I think you're just running out of moves. She gave me a ghost of a smile. Then you never knew me at all. I leaned in, not too close. Just enough. I do now. And I'm not playing by your rules anymore. Then I walked out into the sunlight, the Arizona heat suddenly welcome on my face. War doesn't end in a courtroom. But it's a damn good place to start turning the tide. 6 months later, Tucson looked different from 30 stories up. The air was still dry, the sun still ruthless, but something had shifted. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was the way I could breathe again without second-guessing the air. Maybe it was the silence that no longer felt dangerous. Just earned. I stood on the balcony of my new condo, sleek, minimalist, mine, and watched the city lights shimmer against the desert skyline. The distant hum of traffic drifted up like white noise. Below, the world moved on. But up here, things were still. I had recovered most of the assets. Not all, there are always losses you can't invoice. But enough. Enough to rebuild my portfolio, realign my business, reclaim the time and energy I had wasted trying to save someone who never wanted saving. My consulting firm was doing better than ever. 2 corporate contracts. 1 international. Promotions led to introductions, which led to opportunity. The irony was bitter and beautiful, betrayal had stripped me down, and in doing so, made me sharper. I hadn't seen Kayla since the courtroom. Her financial penalties were steep. Restitution payments, frozen assets, an IRS audit that would take years to untangle. But no prison. She walked with a record and a smirk. Of course she did. As for Travis, he hadn't been so lucky. 3 women, 2 before Kayla, 1 after, stepped forward with similar financial abuse claims. The DA had all the patterns they needed. He was indicted for fraud and coercive financial exploitation. The last I heard, he took a plea deal. 18 months. Maybe less with good behavior. Good behavior. From Travis. I smiled bitterly at the thought. Inside, I heard soft laughter, Heather's. She was in the kitchen, pouring wine, probably teasing herself about forgetting where I kept the glasses, even though she'd been here dozens of times. Heather Lynn. Freelance corporate strategist. Calm. Measured. Brilliant in a way that wasn't loud, but surgical. We'd met at a financial ethics panel I was dragged into. She asked a question I couldn't answer cleanly, and that was enough. We started meeting. Talking. Comparing scars. She was one of Travis's ghosts, too. Not a victim, she always said, just someone who let her guard down once and paid in lessons. We didn't rush. We didn't pretend. No declarations. Just proximity and understanding. The kind of relationship that didn't need permission to breathe. I stepped back inside and sat on the edge of the couch, scrolling through an old email from Julian, one of the last updates on the Kayla case. He'd flagged one document for me to keep in case her legal team ever circled back. A document she'd signed 3 years ago, surrendering her rights to anything under my LLC. She never read what she signed. That was always her weakness. Thinking paperwork was beneath her. Thinking love would make me stupid. It had. But not forever. Heather walked in, carrying 2 glasses of red. She handed me one, kissed my cheek, and curled up beside me. Comfortable. Familiar. Unthreatening. We talked for a while, about work, a client of hers who had just tanked a merger, the absurdity of politics in finance. And then, sometime after midnight, she excused herself to check her email. I stayed on the couch, flipping through the channels, half lost in the way the TV flickered across the walls. And then I heard it. A pause. No gasp. No cry. Just silence. The kind you only recognize when you've learned to fear it. I walked quietly to the office door and leaned just enough to see the screen. She didn't notice me. Her laptop glowed softly, dimmed by the hour, but still clear enough for me to read the subject line of the encrypted message. From k.shadow@protonmail.com. Subject, update. Step 1 complete. Preparing for the next round. K. She stared at it, unreadable. Then, without a word, she closed the laptop, reached for her wine, and leaned back in her chair as if nothing had happened. She never knew I saw it. I stood there for a long second. Long enough to feel the weight of what might be forming again. Was she involved? Was she a piece in a larger game? Was Kayla still pulling strings, or just setting fires for sport? I didn't know. And that uncertainty, it didn't burn the way it used to. It chilled. It reminded me that some people don't leave your life. They just move to the shadows. Heather came to bed an hour later, smiling like always. Nothing in her eyes betrayed anything. Nothing in her touch. But I kept mine just a little lighter. A little more aware. Because now I understood. Some people don't love to feel safe. They love to feel in control. Kayla wasn't done. Not really. I had the strange, gnawing certainty that her moves were just beginning. She didn't lose in court. She just shed a skin. And whatever came next, she'd learned from every mistake. I turned off the bedroom light, slid under the sheets, and stared into the dark. The thing that kept me awake wasn't anger. Not anymore. It was the knowledge that Kayla was still out there. Watching. Planning. And maybe, not alone. A lesson etched in scar tissue. What kept me awake wasn't hate. It was clarity. Some people aren't born to love. They're born to survive, at any cost. Trust is the most precious currency, and the easiest to steal. In love or in business, never assume silence means ignorance. Some of us wait. And when we move, we don't miss.